Hi. For my final capstone project, I chose to do the assignment that is option 3. So, watching a movie and reviewing it based on a film character. So, I chose to watch Precious because I had never seen Precious. It came out, I believe, in 2009, and in 2009 I was pretty young, so I think this movie was a little too mature for me at that time, so I never really watched it. So I took this as a perfect opportunity to watch it and really be able to analyze it. I chose Precious as the character that I was going to answer the questions about. So for the first one, which is the lens of multi-system impact, so family, social challenges, oppression, kind of everything. Precious is basically lives with her mom, and her mom is incredibly abusive. Her father's also incredibly abusive. He has sexually assaulted Precious on numerous accounts. She has almost nobody in her corner ever, right off the bat. And her in the opening scene, it's like literally her getting kicked out of school. So she has a lot of factors working against her. She has crazy amounts of trauma. She has almost no family. Well, she has family, but no one that she feels loves her, and that's very much probably true. She has two children. You see that at the end of the movie. She's living in Harlem, which Harlem in the 80s was, and still kind of is, predominantly African American. So she's living as well on welfare in a predominantly African American neighborhood. So she's just got a lot of things working against her. So that's kind of her rationale, or her in a gist. I chose to pick Precious because the movie is her life story, but I also think she is like the epitome of someone that you just admire so much. I asked my mom, I was like, is this based on a true story? So I honestly don't know, but she's so incredibly strong, and it just makes you tear up so much, because it's just like, that there's so many people that have gone through such similar things, and you just, I don't know, it's just one of those things, especially as like an empathetic social worker, where you're just like, oh, this person is so amazing for them being them and persevering. Like, I don't know, she was just so admirable, and I wanted to talk about her the most. So I kind of already touched on it, but her environment and family system is nearly non-existent. Her family system is her mother, she lives with her mom. Her mom is insanely abusive, both physically and verbally. She is not only abusive to her Precious, but also Precious's daughter, who has Down syndrome. And even Precious's grandmother, who I believe was the caretaker of Precious's daughter, is scared of her mother. Precious has to do everything. She has to feed her mom. If it's not done right, she gets physically hit. It's an awful living situation. Her father sexually abuses her, and her daughter's father is also Precious's father, and the movie explains that Precious is currently pregnant as well with another child. Precious is only 16 years old, so she's just a kid, and it's just horrible what she goes through. Her mother talks to her like she's a 40-year-old girl, but she's 16. I mean, she's a kid that should be doing kid stuff. And this impacts her immensely, that she's so strong and she holds it together for so long, but that trauma is just, you can tell it's just like what it's weighing on her. That being said, she also can't read or write, and so she, does leave her standard education to go to an alternative school, which one could argue is the best thing that ever happened to her. She's also living on welfare, so they are living in poverty. She lives in a pretty rough apartment with her mom, and her mom doesn't do anything for her. she lives off welfare. She claims Precious and her daughter to get more welfare, so she's basically manipulating the system, and Precious is getting nothing. She even, at one point she's stealing food because she's hungry, the poor girl, and she's just called horrible things. So her environment for the first half of the movie is awful. But that being said, once she goes to the alternative school, her school environment looks up a lot. She starts getting more protective factors. Her teacher, you can tell, just cares about her so much. When she's in the hospital, her classmates come to visit her. Things really start to look up for her, and I don't know. It starts becoming better for her, and so I think you could really make the argument that her going to that school was single-handedly the best thing that could have happened. So the strengths, I would say, for her are the fact that she has a teacher that never gave up on her. When she goes to the alternative school, she tells her to write in her journal, and she pushes her, and she gets her from I think she was reading at like a first grade level, and then towards the end of the movie she's reading at an 8th grade level, like someone who literally never gave up on her. She also starts meeting with the social worker. I think that's what she is. She works at the welfare office, and she starts meeting with her, and I think she kind of is the girl who pushed Precious to really admit what was going on in her life, which was also amazing because Precious was able to finally break free. It was awful because she got in a horrible fight with her mom when they, lost their welfare. But that being said, Precious finally was able to break free from her mother and move on with her life and be by herself. So her strength comes from a lot of people, but that being said, she equally has the challenges, like her mother and her father and the school that didn't care about her and the principal that kicked her out, all that, which again, the principal could have been looking out for her, wanting her to go to an alternative school, seeing that she had a better chance there. But she had a lot of challenges in her community that hindered her a lot. So as far as like social oppression, she was living in poverty. She didn't have anything much of anything. They were living off welfare, and her mom, I think, would like use the food stamps on herself. Like Precious was getting nothing. So socially she was living extremely low income and living in a predominantly African American neighborhood. As far as like body oppression and trauma, Precious does identify as an African American female, which historically females, especially African American, are going to experience the most amount of oppression. And so she's, again, just yet another factor in the community that's working against her. And then trauma, your mother physically and verbally abusing you for 16 years of your life is going to have immense amounts of trauma. On top of that, your father doing the same. So she has a lot of intersectional identities as far as her trauma, the color of her skin, as well as being a female and living in poverty. The known systems of oppression, I would say probably the number one would be that she is African American, but also that she, like I said, is female. I think when you're working on a micro level with what she's gone through with her trauma, I guess that would probably be one of her bigger systems. But I think it's important when you're working on a micro level with a client that, like, if Precious was my client, prior to knowing what, she doesn't tell people what's going on, I think it's important to be patient and remember, like, the systems approach. Like, there's always going to be a reason someone is acting the way they are, and with what she's gone through, it's incredibly obvious why she acts the way she does. Not saying she acts in a bad way, because she's incredibly strong, but I think you can tell she wants to tell someone, and she even like tell, she's like, I shouldn't have said anything, but you could tell she just felt like a weight was off her shoulders, and it worked out so well for her that she did tell someone.